A Wall Street Journal op-ed says the real story in America right now is, quote, the explosion of political violence on all sides. The January 6th riot was a dreadful event featuring fringe right-wing militants. The firebombing of pregnancy centers has been as dreadful, featuring fringe left-wing militants. And the dreadful category, the shoot-up at the Republican congressional baseball practice in 2017. The death at a Charlottesville, Virginia rally the same year. Antifa attacks, assassinations of cops, anti-Semitic shootings in synagogues, and the torching of a Portland, Oregon courthouse by rioters. My friend and colleague Will Cain is the co-host of Fox and Friends, and he joins me now. Will, we've been talking about the violence for a long time. The question is, what are they going to do about it? They know who these people are. They planned it, they plotted. They're protesting in front of Supreme Justices' homes because they want to influence the decision, which is illegal. Why aren't the elected officials putting pressure on law enforcement to do the job?
Because as we've come to realize, Lawrence, it appears that we have a dual system of justice. It is not applied universally. And that is manifesting, by the way, in the way political decisions are made and in that striking poll you just showed, where it shows that a good amount of Democrats are okay with this level of violence and overt pressure. That's really shocking, Lawrence, because this is just the beginning as well. The decision hasn't come out of the Supreme Court. This is the result of a leak. What happens when the actual decision comes out, if it does validate what we've seen in the leak? I mean, we're not talking about something small here, right, Lawrence? Not just vandalism. We're talking about firebombs. Multiple instances across this country. We're talking about an assassination attempt on a Supreme Court justice. If politicians don't step up and impose a singular form of justice, not a partisan or one-sided form of justice, they are inviting a more extreme, radical, and potentially violent response.
Yeah, the question is, what are the leaders going to do? But when they're asked about this, they dodge the question. Here's what House Speaker Nancy Pelosi had to say when she was pressed on Democrats' rhetoric about the leak of the Supreme Court draft opinion and how it's fueling the violence against churches and pro-life clinics. Watch what she had to say, Will.
There has been a number of attacks on churches, on crisis pregnancy centers. Republicans are going after Democrats for not saying anything, and they're saying that your rhetoric is contributing to these attacks on these crisis pregnancy centers.
Well, let me just say this. A woman has a right to choose, to live up to her responsibility. This talk of politicizing all of this, I think, is something uniquely American and not right.
The problem, Will, her political decision wasn't the question. Where she stands from an ideological standpoint was not the question. It's what you're going to do about the violence, and she didn't answer that question.
No, so let me just say this. You have not disavowed violence. What we were just talking about, Lawrence, there's an opportunity for the Speaker of the House to say, you know what, we do not want a violent response, no matter if we agree with their ideological ends. But she didn't. She just said, we agree with the ideological ends. What an opportunity. And look, I think that has to speak volumes, does it not? Her unwillingness to condemn violence, her unwillingness to say, no, we don't want to see political extremism in the streets to enforce our ideological ends. Why would she stay silent on that? She was given a choice. And as you point out, she chose to reinforce their ideological agreement. By the way, she's also ignorant, Lawrence. She went on after that to say this is unique to America. It's not in other countries. We're sort of behind the times when it comes to Mexico, for example. She said whether they're embracing more of the woman's right to choose. You know, the case at the center of this, Lawrence, centered on Mississippi, which put a ban on abortions after 20 weeks. That's more progressive and liberal, that law, than Mexico, the vast majority of Europe, and the vast majority of the world. The United States is an outlier on its liberal approach to abortion.
That's exactly right. And I think it's just important to note that those women and children and grown men are coming to our country right now across the border in droves. I want to switch to this. A big admission from President Biden on the state of America under his watch. In an interview with the Associated Press, the president said, quote, people are really, really down. Their need for mental health in America has skyrocketed because people have seen everything upset, everything they've counted on upset. But most of it's the consequence of what happened as a consequence of the COVID crisis. The president's remarks coincide with the skyrocket in inflation, record gas prices, a mess at the border, and a baby formula shortage, and more. A recent poll shows only about 2 in 10 adults say the U.S. is heading in the right direction. That's down from about 10 in April. Will, first of all, it was a struggle getting through what the president was actually trying to say there. But the reality of it is that it's not just the tone of the president. Okay, you can acknowledge it all day, but what are you going to do about making the life better? You promised to make things that were better that weren't broken during the presidential race, but all he said he was going to heal the soul of America, and moms can't even get baby food for them. Gas prices are high, as I just stated, Will.
Yeah, and so people have a bleak outlook of the future. Let's start charitably with a premise where the president may be right. Maybe a lot of this national malaise started with COVID, but it quickly now, Lawrence, not just to be charitable, but to be accurate, it quickly metastasized from there based upon the policies in response to COVID. Starting with lockdowns, placing everybody in their homes and isolating them. Now you start to see skyrocketing rates of depression and suicide, drug use as well. Then come the economic policies. Build Back Better, $1.9 trillion. Would be another $2.3 trillion if not for Joe Manchin. That causes then inflation. The policies then exacerbate the national malaise, which lies at the doorstep of Joe Biden. He says, by the way, Lawrence, you know what he says? He says, well, if it's on me, why is it happening across the globe? And I'm going to tell you why it's happening across the globe. Because the ideas of Build Back Better, which foundations sit on climate justice, reorganizing our economy, that's their words, transforming our economy, were echoed in the UK, in Canada, in New Zealand. It's part of what was considered the Great Reset. Let this opportunity not go to waste. So what they did, Lawrence, is they shook the foundations of not just economy, but the society with this opportunity. And as such, while they shook the foundations talking about reimagining our history, our policing, our climate, they ended up with ripples at the surface. Inflation, higher interest rates, a stock market that's now below 30,000. Oh, they took advantage of the opportunity and they metastasized the crisis and this malaise, this national depression.
I mean, it's really unbelievable when you look at it, Will, because it was so predictable. I mean, I don't think we should ever have an election that is just about tone and tenor. I'm not saying it can't be a part of the conversation, but when you see that a candidate lays all his policies out there and suddenly everyone in the mainstream media is suddenly shocked by the implications of that.
Right.
I mean, the other side did predict that this was going to happen. It was dismissed as you just want a guy that's so bombastic. I think it's unacceptable. In that same interview, the president didn't. Go ahead, Will.
I was going to say, Lawrence, you know who put this wonderfully, who just said what you said in less than 140 characters, was Elon Musk. He said, the president of the United States thinks he was elected to transform America, when in fact he was elected because people wanted less drama.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And in that same interview, the president denies the recession is inevitable, and it's coming. He also says his policies did not cause inflation and caused Republicans' criticism of his spending bizarre. First of all, it's not inevitable. Secondly, we're in a stronger position than any nation in the world to overcome this inflation. If it's my fault, why is it the case in every other major industrial country? This is what you were talking about, Will. In the country, that inflation is higher. Someone should ask themselves, if it's a consequence of our spending, why have we reduced the deficit? The Washington Post has twice given his claim 3 Pinocchios. Will, what is your reaction to that?
All right, so I addressed some of that, as you mentioned in the previous answer, about comparing us to the globe. He's gotten 3 Pinocchios. It's simply false, by the way, that we're the best positioned when it comes to inflation. I mean, Lawrence, I don't have it in front of me, but I think 15. Let's put the over-under. There's at least 15 countries, you know, in the advanced economic world who have lower rates of inflation than the United States of America. So just what? A flat-out lie? And regarding the deficit as well, that's 3 Pinocchios by the Washington Post, because he's not accomplished some historical proportion of deficit reduction. He has reduced it compared to record levels during pandemic spending. But I'll leave you with this, Lawrence, as he talks about all of this and puts it into the characterization of a nation of people who are feeling depressed. Our friend, Pete Hegseth has a new book out called Battle for the American Mind. And he talks about sort of the foundation of purpose and meaning in the United States. And I'm a big believer in this, Lawrence. Look, we have spent the better part of 2 years ripping out the foundational meaning of what it is to be American, because we believe, or a lot of us, or some significant percentage of us, believe it's foundationally sinful. So we've ripped it out. Who are we? We no longer ask that question. We no longer care about the answer. Why are we here? What's our purpose? And we have put nothing in its place. Nothing. Nothing in place of who are we, why are we here, and what is our meaning. You're going to be left with generations of people who not only have had their personal wealth destroyed, but no idea what they're doing here, why we're Americans, what makes us special. No idea. And that is a recipe for not just individual, but societal decay and depression.
You know, Will, the fascinating thing about it is this is not a D or R thing. It's going to impact everyone. I'm telling you, as someone,
right,
and you do it as well, Will, goes to diners all across the country and then reports on this crisis in major cities as well that are quite liberal. Everyone is all saying the same thing, and there's one person that they hold accountable for that. It's Joe Biden, and Democrats are going to figure out how they're going to message that. Will, brother, thank you so much. You can catch Will tomorrow on Fox and Friends Weekend. Also catch the Will Cain podcast. Thanks, brother.
Thank you, Lawrence.
I'm Steve Ducey.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.